So this month I'm focusing a little bit on increasing my focus. So therefore I read all books on motivation and focus and how to increase those. And I found this book called The One Thing that I really liked. And with this book I learned a few lessons that hopefully you can apply as well if you're doing your PhD right now or if you're a student. And let's get right into it. So hi, I'm Charlotte Frasa, a PhD student in computational neuroscience at the Donders Institute in the Netherlands. And today I want to talk about the 4 lessons I learned from this book called The One Thing. And I think in general it is a really enjoyable book. So if you want to learn a little bit more, I also highly recommend to read it. But let's get straight into the first lesson that I learned. So the first thing the book talks about is the myth of to-do lists. And I actually really like this because the idea is that to-do lists, if you make them, you just put everything that you have to do in that day. But the pitfall with to-do lists that I've also noticed in myself is that it's really easy to just start doing these tiny little tasks that clutter up your to-do list. Like, for example, replying to emails or doing the grocery shopping or texting back this one friend. And although these are valid things you have to do in a day, these are not the most important thing, and especially not for your research or if you're a student for studying. And it's really easy to feel really good at the end of the day if you crossed off all these tiny to-dos, but you haven't really done anything significant for your major goals, which are your research or finishing your studies. And therefore, I think this is a really valid point, that the myth of to-do lists, that they make you really productive. So the book then goes into the Pareto principle, and the Pareto principle is that 80% of all your output is actually produced by just 20% of your input. So probably if you're studying all day, all the studying is mainly a lot of reading or a lot of looking at lectures online, but the actual studying where you recall the information is probably only about 2 hours every day if you study for 10 hours. And the same thing is if you're doing research right now. I notice it with myself that I can spend a lot of time watching lectures or reading papers, but the actual work that I need to do is usually only around 2 hours every day. So with the Pareto principle, you if you put all the tasks you need to do, you can kind of see which are the 20% that are actually giving the results. And once you found those, you can focus more on those. And the book, The One Thing, actually goes further, and they say that you really have to zoom in even more and find every day that one thing that you can do in your project or in your company that will give you the most return value. And I do think in a sense this is a little bit an oversimplification, because of course there are many things you could do or many things that would be beneficial. But I do think in a period when you're feeling a little bit overwhelmed and you're not really sure which way to go, should I go to B or A, and you're not making any choices, then I think it's really good to focus down on just one thing. And that's why this week I try to do that, because I am feeling a little bit overwhelmed in my research right now, because there are just so many possibilities I could go towards. So yeah, I decided every day in the morning to just pick one thing I had to do that day and which would be the most important for my research, and then only focus on completing that one task. And in the afternoon or in the evening, if I finished it, I could do anything I want. So I could watch some lectures, or I could also have some leisure time if I wanted to. And I do think this helped a lot. Like, it made me feel at least a little bit accomplished every day and kind of gave me that dopamine boost that I needed to continue my research. So the second lesson he goes into is the myth of willpower. And I personally really agree with this, and you probably noticed it as well, that if you have to use your willpower a lot during the day, it's actually depleted quite quickly. So if you want to do many things that require willpower during the day, the probability of you doing those things late in the day are very slim to none. So if you think of your tasks and you see a lot of them require willpower, you have to kind of calculate this in. And also for me, the thing I notice the most is that because I'm working at home in my office all day, there's so much temptation to just get a snack or to watch YouTube for a little bit. And to resist this actually requires a lot of willpower. So that's why next week mainly I want to see if I can change up my environment a little bit. Because even though university is closed right now where I live, the cafes are still open, or I could go to friends. And I think by being around people that are also a little bit focused, I need to use less of my willpower to stay focused. And the third lesson I learned from this book is the myth of a work-life balance. So the fact with balance is that we kind of feel that once we've achieved balance, then we're there, we're set, we're good to go. We have achieved the pinnacle of life. But the thing is with balance that you can kind of go in and out of it quite quickly. So for example, if you do yoga and you do the tree pose, then you know that staying in the tree pose actually requires a lot of mental effort, and also for your body to keep adjusting itself to keep standing. And the same thing is with work-life balance, he explains in the book. So work-life balance is a constant struggle between leaning too much into your work at periods of time and leaning too much into your personal relationships, or for example your hobbies. And I think this is true. I think there are just periods in your life that you are more focused on your work, or you're a little bit stressed for your studies and you need to study for a continuous week. But then it's really important to also go back to being a little bit more focused on your own personal life. So for example, if you have a stressful period for 1 month, it's really nice to then block in a small holiday or a longer weekend that you can really reconnect with your hobbies or with your friends. And that is kind of what balance is. So balance is not really set on an everyday level, and it's also different per individual. So some people need to see a lot of people or have a lot of relationships, whereas other people are okay to work actually quite a lot and don't need that much balance in that sense. But one thing he also talks about, which I thought was really good, is that if life is kind of like juggling all these different facets in our life, so for example work, friends, family, your health, then work is kind of like a rubber ball. If you drop it during the juggling, it will bounce back up if you pick it up again. But family and friends and your health are kind of like glass balls. So if you drop them, they actually scatter or shatter. And I think this is actually really true, because you cannot just leave your friends and your family for 1 year and expect them to just be waiting for you, unless you have really good friends or family. But these are actually continuous relationships that you need to work on. So for example, if you have children, if you miss the first years of their life, you cannot really get those back. Whereas with work, I think you can always start again. But this could be personal. I think just in the end, life is not work. It's more relationships and friends and family, and also your health. So these are things you should never fully drop, even during periods that you feel you need to work really hard. So yeah, and then the last thing he talks about is to find that one thing that you can do. And I think he recommends a really interesting exercise, and it kind of goes like this. So you think of the next 5 years, what's the one thing you want to do that you think will change your life? So for me, that's of course getting my PhD finally. Oh my God. And then the next step is to go a little bit smaller. So what's the one thing you can do this year that will help you achieve that goal? So for me, it would be something like writing 1 paper this year, although the year is almost over, so I won't finish that, but next year. And then you go even smaller. So what's the one thing you can do this month that will help you achieve this goal? What's the one thing you can do this week? What's the one thing you can do this day? And then what's the one thing you can do this hour? And I think this is a really interesting exercise that you can do with every point of your life that you find important. So for example, you could also think of friends and family. What's the thing I want to do the next 5 years that would really increase my value of the relationships that I have? And then go smaller like that. And I think by going through this exercise, everything that you kind of want in life becomes suddenly very tangible and very reachable. And that's why I do think it's a really nice exercise. So yeah, to try to find your one thing. And if you're struggling a little bit with motivation and feeling a little bit burned out during your PhD, I did make another video about it, so you can check that out right here. And otherwise, see you next week for another focus motivation video. So see you. Bye.